Yo, what's up guys? You got pokeaim here. Today I have a discussion video on what weather is the best in Pokemon Sword and Shield. And just all around, I kind of want to talk about like why I think rain is the best weather overall, period, right? Before like looking at the metagame or anything like that. So I'm going to talk about that. Feel free to listen. Leave your thoughts down below as well. What weather you think is the best overall and what weather you think is the best in the current gen that we have. So let me tell you why I think it's rain. Just overall, not necessarily in the current gen, but overall. So rain does a whole lot of things, right? Not only does it allow you to have, those viable swift swimmers like Mantine, Barraskewda. The biggest thing as well is that its weather is also boosting the water type attacks coming out from these Pokemon, right? Just automatically. Doesn't need an ability to do that, right? It's not like Sun, which needs solar power, or Sand, which needs Sand Force. It's just automatically, naturally raising the power by 1.5 of those water type attacks. And on top of that, it's also just naturally weakening the power of fire type attacks, which doesn't necessarily matter for the standard rain abusers, but for Pokemon like Ferrothorn, which are usually on rain teams as well as your hazard setter and also opposing rain answer, it really does give it a big thing. Rain also has the buffs of making Hurricane always hit, and I mean Pelipper doesn't learn it, but giving it Thunder, right? So 100%, always hitting. So I think Rain overall has to have the highest place for me, just because it's so easy just to dump on rain abusers like Barraskewda and Mantine. Mantine specifically got such, it was so much better this generation. Not only does it have the heavy duty boots, but being able to hit 100% accurate Hurricanes, being able to use Scald. And this was actually a standard set we were seeing for a little while now. Rain kind of fell off a little bit. But this is like a standard set, and have the metronome, which the more you hit Hurricane, which you'd be able to do because of the rain up, the stronger it becomes. And I think another reason as to why rain is just so good is because the rain setter is actually, it provides a lot of utility, right? Like Pelipper is not a bad Pokemon. It's not a great Pokemon, but it's not a bad Pokemon because it has stuff that the other weathers don't have. This mon has access to U-turn, so it can set up rain and get out of there, right? So you're already giving yourself one less turn. You literally bring it in, force a switch, and you don't have to predict. You go for U-turn, you see what they do, right? It also has reliable recovery in Roost, and on top of what I already mentioned, but its water type attacks are boosted by its own ability, making its base 95 special attack actually a respectable special attack stat. So like Rain overall, I feel is king overall, just for those specific reasons. Not only Pokemon get faster because of Swift Swim, but it's also just naturally boosting its abilities. And of course, this generation, on top of that, we got Dracovish, which, if you guys didn't know, Fish's Wren is doubled in power if the user moves first. So you'll typically see like a Choice Scarf Dracovish set, and it just clicks Fish's Wren in the rain, which is already boosted, by the way, by Strongjaw as well. So it just becomes insanely powerful. With a Choice Band, it's 2KOing things like Toxapex if you're adamant with Choice Band. So it's crazy because I think that Rain overall just has the best out of it. And that's not like that there's not other Rain abilities, but it just benefits the most Pokemon as well. Like in previous generations, you would have Tornadus on Rain, or in this generation, you can run Dragapult with Thunder as well. It doesn't have to worry about missing, or even you'll have even dry skin abusers like maybe like a Heliolisk, for instance, which also appreciates, the Sun as well with solar power, but it can hit Thunder, and it's cool because it has like Grass Knot for maybe opposing mons that might be bad for rain, for example like Seismitoad, though Mantine just eats that up. Focus Blast for Pokemon like Ferrothorn. So I think that rain all around kind of brings it's just the most well-rounded. It gives weather the most for it. But now let's talk about Sand. So I do think that Sand overall is also the second best. And also another thing about Pelipper, like if you even look at Battle Stadium doubles or VGC, it can also do like Tailwind stuff. So and it has knockoff too. So it's just a great conductor for rain. and that's why I think it like range works around. But we have Sand. So I think it's no secret that Tyranitar is probably one of the best Pokemon ever. It has consistently been used ever since it's come out, right? In the highest of tiers. For those that don't know Smogon, Tyranitar is OU. It's always been OU ever since it's been out. Real quick, I have merch going on, so I'm just going to promote it right here because I forgot. But if y'all want to pick up my Puma merch, it's only available until April 3rd. Drop a Draco X Puma. That link is down below. You can click on the main link, or you can click on my website and click on shop. Those links are down below. Now, Sand is really, really good because Sand has great Pokemon doing it. And I'll put them right here. So we already have Tyranitar, obviously. Tyranitar, one of the best to ever do it. We have Hippowdon, who is, some are saying, the best Pokemon currently in Pokemon Sword and Shield OU. And then, of course, we have Gigalith, which recently got it. I think it was either last generation or the generation before, which is actually very good for Gigalith because Sand does a few things. Sand naturally boosts the special defensive rock types. So Tyranitar is coming in with a 50% boost, a 1.5 times special defense boost in the Sand, so making it incredibly bulky, which it already was with its base 100 HP, base 100 special defense. And then on top of that, Tyranitar is base 134 attack. So it's a fantastic Sand abuser because in previous generations when we had Pursuit, you could come in on something, Pursuit doesn't exist, but you could come in on something like Latios or Latias and Pursuit trap them. But it's a phenomenal Sand abuser because it can function as its own Pokemon and in many different sets, where there'd be a Choice Band, Choice Scarf, Choppleberry, Lure, Sand, Smooth Rock, if you want to use it with Excadrill, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second, or Dragon Dance or anything like that, or Mixed Lure with like extra. It can do whatever it wants, right? It's just that type of Pokemon. Hippowdon, ridiculous wall, right? It has reliable recovery and slack off, which is something that Pelipper had. Not Roost, but it has reliable recovery, which is something that the others don't have. Great stab. Pure Ground is fantastic as well. Of course, not taking any hit from the Sandstorm damage. It can reliably set up Stealth Rock, which is something that they all can do, which is a big thing, right? Like whether Pelipper doesn't set up rocks, right? That's typically on rain teams. Your rocker will be Ferrothorn, unless you want to use Seismitoad, Mega Swampert from the previous generation, or I guess Dreadnought, if that's your thing. If Gigantamax is allowed where you are, you can set up rocks with that. But Hippowdon can do that, and Hippowdon can also eat up hits. We already know that about Hippowdon. And Gigalith, it just becomes this massive special wall, or this massive tank because of its base 135 attack stat. Let me put Rock Blast there, that way you can actually see an impressive attack stat. Yeah, like that's neutral, right? At 307 coming in, it'd be able to take on in the tiers it's in. Special attacks coming at it because of the Sandstorm Spadef boost, and it's just good at that. But that's just as a whole, right? The Sandstorm abusers are all very, very good. That's something that Rain didn't have. The Rain people are Pelipper and previously Politoed, right? And Politoed in the last generation in Ninetales, or in 5th generation. I'm going back to Pokemon Platinum. Did I just say Pokemon Platinum? Pokemon Black and White, excuse me. Those Pokemon were not good, but they became used because of their abilities. So, obviously, these are actually all solid Pokemon in their own right, and they all do different things. Hippowdon in general can tank hits from basically every Pokemon in the metagame. But Sand also has one of the best abusers ever to use Sand Rush, and that is Excadrill. Excadrill is one of the best abusers of Sand just because it has great stab, it has phenomenal attacks in Earthquake and Iron Head. Rapid Spin obviously got a buff this generation, 50 base power and gives you a speed boost, and then it even has Swords Dance, or you can use Rock Tomb. So Excadrill in general is very good, but the thing that Sand doesn't have that what Rain has is that Sand doesn't give you an automatic buff outside of the Spadef boost to rock types. So it doesn't give you an offensive buff, which is something that Rain does. So that's why I have it behind it in general. But in the current metagame, I'd say Sand is easily better just because Hippowdon can wall a plethora of Pokemon. And it also pairs well with Excadrill, which can Rapid Spin, can be a sweeper and do all that stuff too. Like Hippowdon can wall Zero Aura, and it can deal with a lot of physical threats. It can take on Aegislash depending on the EV spread. You know, it's just very, very good in the metagame. And Excadrill is one of those abusers. Now, of course, there is the Sand Force ability, but that's a very hard ability to justify in the current generation. because Sand Rush is so good on sand, and then Mode Breaker is so good too because it allows you to click Earthquake on Pokemon like Rotom Wash and Rotom Heat, which would otherwise resist or be immune to your dual stab. So it's very hard to justify using Sand Force, especially like I'm not going to use Sand Force on this Mon when I can set up the sand with it. So it's very, very hard to justify to use it on those Pokemon. I think the only Pokemon that can get away with using Sand Force right now is in lower tiers if you're using a Alolan Dugtrio, just because its other abilities are not very good. Sand Veil, I don't think it's banned this generation, but it was banned previously when Sand was infinite. Obviously, guys, Sand is only 5 turns now, and more if you use Smooth Rock, 8. But Sand Force is only basically justified on Alolan Dugtrio because its other abilities don't really matter, and that's if you're using it on like a sand type of team. You know, it can abuse it with Iron Head, Earthquake, and Rock Slide. I think another thing that makes Sand very good, and this is coming from a Battle Stadium singles standpoint, so it's not Battle Spot, it's Battle Stadium singles, so 3v3, is that Excadrill is a phenomenal Dynamax user, just because all it has to do is would have Sand Rush. You probably get rid of the Rapid Spin here. I got rid of Rapid Spin to put Rapid Spin. You put Rock Slide, and typically you see like a weakness policy on this thing, and Excadrill doesn't need its a Tyranitar or Hippowdon to do its thing. It would go for max Rockfall. It would double its HP because of Dynamax. Excadrill has a phenomenal HP stat. Double its HP because of Dynamax. Set up the sand so it'd be faster because of Sand Rush. And then maybe you hit it with Earthquake or something. It'd be able to live because of its double HP, get its weakness policy, and from there it can sweep you. So that's one of the few times where, not the few times, but that's one of the times where you'd actually be able to use Excadrill Sand Rush on its own. But in general here in Standard, I think that Rain still beats it as a buff to Pokemon, but because the abusers are so good in Excadrill's like a top 15 Pokemon, right? I think it's like top 10 even. In terms of usage, that's why Sand becomes so good, and then there's just so much you can do out of these Pokemon. So we already know Sand is good, we know Rain is good, and again, in current metagame, I think that Sand is better just because the current abusers are just way better. First off, Excadrill can muscle through almost, if not every single Pokemon with a few Iron Head flinches. Right, that's just a fact. Excadrill can beat almost everything. Rapid Spin, it doesn't use Rock Slide usually. It doesn't use the weakness policy either. Sometimes Leftovers, sometimes Life Orb. Leftovers a little bit better just for longevity. But this set in particular can muscle through most things. And obviously we already know that Excadrill can be a lead with Stealth Rock as well, as a focus actually. So the abusers of Sand are just, or this abuser specifically is just very, very good. So let's move on. Let's move on to Sun. So Sun is interesting because Sun actually does give a buff, just like Rain. Because the Sun just naturally boosts fire type attacks. So the thing about Sun is though, it has 2 starters, and I guess 3 if you count the Vulpix, which are Torkoal. It's Torkoal and it's Ninetales. Now, unfortunately, Ninetales got this back in Gen 5, right? Black and white, not platinum, black and white. And it just doesn't have the good stats. It really doesn't. But the thing that Ninetales had was the speed, and back in the day, it used to be able to Will-O-Wisp and Protect and whatnot, and Flamethrower. And Protect was good for scouting, and even run Toxic occasionally. It run both, like dual stab and stuff like that. And Protect was good with scouting. It had Leftovers because it didn't have to worry about Sun running out. Obviously, that's not the case right now. I don't think the abusers of Sun, or I don't think the Sun setters, I think they're some of the worst Pokemon. Like, had Infernape got Sun, Infernape would be incredible because it can beat all the other weathers naturally. It can Thunder Punch Pelipper, it can close combat Tyranitar, right? It hits the Hail setters with fire or fighting type attacks, and it has access to U-turn so it can get in and out of there. But Ninetales, not a very big Pokemon. In RU though, you'd see like a choice spec, so it actually is able to abuse its own Sun. You know, like Fire Blast, Solar Beam, which is a pretty big thing as well. We'll talk about that. And then it has like Overheat, and then your last move is, this Mon doesn't have anything really. Use like Extra Sensory, whatever, who cares. Torkoal is a little bit better, mainly because it is bulkier. It has that base 140 defense. I really wish Torkoal got a higher HP stat, but it's a little bit better. The heavy duty boots definitely made them a little bit better too because they can come in multiple times. And of course, Torkoal can abuse this under Trick Room with Eruption and stuff, with the fact that Sun is up. I already know that. We've seen like After You, Lilligant in VGC and whatnot. But the big thing about Torkoal is that it has lava plume, so it's harder to switch in on this mon because you can get burnt, and it also has access to rapid spin and also stealth rock built into itself. So it kind of has the package of it can set up hazards, it sets up stun, it can get rid of hazards. So that's a big thing about Torkoal. And even then, like in Battle Stadium, you'll also see like a yawn set, that way it stops like set up Cloyster and other Pokemon from setting up like on it. And even Torkoal also got body press, so it's a decent sun setter, right? It's not bad. Now, in terms of abusers of the sun, the ones that naturally abuse it, the fire types, Darmanitan is the big one, but not a lot of fire types that exist. Like, I don't want to put Cinderace there because Cinderace isn't typically seen on sun. Same thing with Rotom Heat. They're not typical sun mons you would see. And if I actually put fire type Pokemon here, obviously there's Charizard, but I'm not talking about that just yet because I'm trying to make the point that there isn't as many fire types initially that would be ran on sun besides maybe Darmanitan, and by itself, just because it is a fire type, right? Just because it's a fire type. Obviously, I'm not forgetting Charizard. I know that Charizard is that, but the difference between Charizard and Darmanitan is that Darmanitan doesn't need its ability to, Charizard doesn't need the ability either, but Solar Power is just better. But between this and Rain is that Barraskewda and Mantine are getting buffs period in Rain. Obviously fire types like Darmanitan and Charizard are too because they are fire types, but it doesn't need its ability, which Solar Power does for Charizard, which is really cool as well. Obviously, you have your Fire Blast, you have your Solar Beam, your last move can, depending on where you're playing, Dragon Pulse can work if you're playing Battle Stadium singles and you're playing Dragapult and Hydreigon, because you can Dynamax, and the Max Dragon move can deal with them. Obviously Air Slash is a big thing too, so I wouldn't use Hurricane on Sun because it can miss, but it can become Max Airstream, which is obviously great for the boost. And then like Focus Blast is also something for Tyranitar, but you don't have to run that. And the big thing about Charizard is it got the heavy duty boost this generation, so you don't even need to use Roost. You don't even need to use, or you don't really need to even fear the Stealth Rock. So obviously that, but outside of that, the abusers of this Pokemon of Sun are typically grass types, because of the chlorophyll ability. So you'll see Venusaur, which is a phenomenal abuser of it because it has access to growth, which it gives you +2 attack and special attack in the sun. If you use it, normally it's +1. And of course, Solar Beam is a one-turn charge move. Unfortunately, it's not 200 base power like it was in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, which is not unfortunate. As I say that, it shouldn't be. And of course, you have like Sludge Bomb, and then Venusaur has access to Weather Ball now, which becomes a fire type attack in the sun. It could also use Earth Power too with Chlorophylls, right? So that's like one of the better sun abusers that you will see. Venusaur is one of the top ones, and if you keep going through it, if lower tiers, Victory Ball, I don't think Victory Ball is around right now. I'm just thinking of like old generations, right? But let me just put Chlorophyll, because I know Leafeon is one of them. Yeah, Vileplume, Shiftry. So the people that usually abuse Sun, besides the minimal fire types, because there's actually usually more water types that can abuse Rain than fire types that can abuse Sun, because I think these are the two best ones right now, because they get the most out of it. In fact, I actually think if you're not playing a Dynamax meta, Charizard ain't that great unless you're using Choice Scarf or Choice Specs to give it that speed or power. But Darmanitan, because Darmanitan can easily run Choice Scarf and abuse its already strong Flare Blitz, which is even boosted even more, right? But in terms of like this, because the main abusers aren't always they're mons like Venusaur, they're grass types, right? They have to worry about fire type attacks being even stronger, which is a big thing for them. And also, it's cool because they can pivot in on the water type attacks easier because Sun is up, and they pair well with Torkoal. Like, just naturally pairs well with Torkoal. Torkoal is weak to water. Venusaur resists water, so that's just a natural typing right there. I think that one thing that Sun does struggle with though is finding a good ground type that's not Dugtrio, but Dugtrio is currently something you can run. This is something that's run on Sun teams because of its ability to deal with the rock types and all that stuff, and just trapping Tyranitar and things like that to help out Torkoal. But Sun is good. I think Sun is good because Darmanitan is solid and provides U-turn momentum, and it U-turns out on like Seismitoad, for instance, and then Venusaur comes in and just threatens it with a grass move or something like that. It also has Weather Ball to threaten Corviknight, which is a really big thing that Venusaur got. I'm glad that, I mean, it had it, but like it has it with Chlorophyll and has Earth Power Chlorophyll. These are things it didn't have. It didn't have this ability with these two moves before. So I'm glad it got it. Like Sun is just solid, right? Even as I'm saying this, I'm like, maybe Sun's a little bit better than I thought, but I just think it's easier to use Sand because that shield is really good, and you don't even need Sand to use extra charge. Just a Powder just happens to be really good, and then Pelipper just gives you a little bit less drawbacks because of the immediate raw power plus Swift Swim that these Pokemon have. That's the big thing. Like the Sun abusers, yes, they're getting the fire types. Yes, they're getting the fire boost, but they don't have Chlorophyll, right? So these fire types don't have Chlorophyll, so they're not doubling their speed. They need to use items like Choice Scarf or something to double them. That's something that has a different from the actual weather itself, right, of rain. But Sun is still very solid, and these abusers in itself just make it good. Ninetales, get out of here. But these abusers in itself, standard. Like Charizard doesn't even have to be here, but you know, Dugtrio, you could even run a damn Seismitoad if you're worried about rain as well. Like this is a Sun build I would use, right? Maybe Flying Resist, not Charizard, or maybe Ground Resist, not Charizard, right? I'd even run a damn Corviknight on this team. Like I don't care. Como works as well. Freaking, you could run Rotom Heat if you wanted, I guess. Not the best type of mon to run on these, but like this can work, or like this core can work, just because Seismitoad helps you not lose every mon to Dracovish clicking Fish's Ren, right? Even with Venusaur coming in with the Sun, it still needs to come in on a Fish's Ren, and if they run Life Orb, they don't have recovery if they're not running Giga Drain. But yeah, so Sun is solid. I still think though the way it works as a whole is still Rain, Sand, and then Sun as a whole. In the current metagame, I'd say Sand is number one, just because Powdon's so good and Tyranitar's so good. Extrio. I'd probably say Sun after that, because I think Rain kind of fell off. Just because Mantine isn't as good with all the mons that are around right now, in my opinion. And then let's actually talk about Hail. So Hail kind of has the Hail sucks. Okay, now Hail does not suck in a sense that. Okay, Hail sucks. How do I put this? Alolan Ninetales is the main Hail setter, and then you also have a few other mons. That's not the one I'm looking at. So you have Alolan Ninetales, right, which can get up the Hail. You also have the Ice Cream Cone, one of my favorite Pokemon of this generation for some reason. I don't know why it's like becoming one of my favorite. Of course, there are others. I know Abomasnow. I'm just making sure I can spell. I know Abomasnow is here as well. Yeah, that's it. Okay, cool. So these are the Hail setters up here. So why is Hail not very good? As a sweeper, right? Comparably, Hail is not as good in terms of its abusers, ice types, right? It's don't worry. I know about Aurora Veil, and I know you can use other things, and I'll talk about that in a sec. But in terms of this, right? Pelipper Rain has good Swift Swimmers, right? We've already shown Mantine, we've shown Barraskewda. Sand has a good Sand Rush user in Excadrill. Drought, or Sun, rather. I don't know why I said Drought. I saw it right there. Sun has good Chlorophyll users in Venusaur, right? But what does Hail have? Let's see what's available for Slush Rush this generation. Pretty sure it's freaking Beartic. And Artizolt and Artivish. Now, when Artizolt actually comes out with Slush Rush, great. But Beartic, unfortunately, I love this mon, but not the greatest. It's because it's just too slow. And of course, Alolan Sandslash was the other mon they had as well. But Beartic's just too slow. Base 50, even with doubled in power, doubled in speed, just still way too slow for most Scarfers. So most mons can revenge kill it. And Ice type in general, I think the big thing that kind of shafts Ice type is it's a terrible defensive typing. It's a really good offensive typing. It's very bad defensively. Now, they did give buffs to Ice type this generation in the sense that Heavy Duty Boots is around. So defensive Ice types like Avila can actually work in lower tiers. And then Body Press as well is a big thing, and then Rapid Spin as well. So in Avila's case, cool. But in general, the Hail setters, while they all do have Aurora Veil now, which is amazing, I'm about to get into it, it doesn't really buff them too much. Snow Cloak isn't the best of abilities, right? You're not typically going to want to use that. Ice Body isn't the best of abilities. It doesn't really do anything for you. Slush Rush is unfortunately not widely distributed. So that's one thing they could actually do to buff Hail, is giving Slush Rush to more Pokemon. The other thing that Hail does do, which I think is really nice, again, I'm talking about Aurora Veil last, even though I have it there, is that it gives you 100% accurate Blizzards, and Blizzard is, of course, 110 base power move. They weaken that, man, that move. But give you access to 100% accurate Blizzard is great. And I think this specifically works with Vanillix because the Ice Cream Cone is really strong. Base 110, special attack. It's the strongest Hail abuser. Strongest one on the mod is a 350. And on top of that, it has access to Taunt. But I think the biggest thing as well is that it has access to Freeze Dry, which is really big because you have an Ice-type stab attack that is super effective on Water-type attacks. So you're already... Basically, the mons that resist Blizzard are Steels, Water, and Fire. So, obviously Ice as well. But, is there one more? I'm forgetting off the top of my head. I don't think there is. But, so you can still use your Stab, which, you know, it's 70 base power, but it gets boosted by the fact that it's the same type as you. So by 1.5. And then it's super effective as well. So doubled. So, it becomes a strong move, and the Ice Cream Cone can actually abuse it. And then from there, you can do things like... Unfortunately, this mon doesn't have very much coverage outside of that. It doesn't really need... I think Blizzard... If this mon got Earth Power, I think it'd be... it'd be busted. And busted in lower tiers. I think it's actually really good just for its ability to be able to break because of Snow Warning, right? But the big thing about Hail is the fact that you can get Aurora Veil. And Aurora Veil, if you guys didn't know, if you pair it with Light Clay, it gives you Light Screen and Reflect for 8 turns. Which is really good because you can click one move. Typically, the abusers are like Grimmsnarl, maybe Espeon, and they'll set up dual screens and things like that. And Grimmsnarl can do it because it has Prankster, so it's priority in it. But it still takes 2 turns, whereas Alolan Ninetales is very fast. Has a good speed tier at base 109 this generation, and can set up the Veil. And on top of that, Alolan Ninetales has a few other things. It also does have Freeze Dry, which is nice for Seismitoad. That's a common Pokemon. It has Encore, which is also really good. That's not what I meant to put. Because it can... force you to use the same move again. So if you're trying to set up in its face, like I've switched in Alolan Ninetales hard on Bisharp as I click Swords Dance, and I just lock them into Swords Dance. And then I abuse it. But the big thing about Hail is that it doesn't have the best Hail abusers. However, has that stopped Hail being its own thing? Hail actually isn't... Like, you know, when you see a Torkoal and a Venusaur, you call that Sun, right? When you see Tyranitar Excadrill or Hippowdon Excadrill, you'll say, oh, okay, he's using a Sand team. When you see Pelipper plus Mantine, Bear, Scuda, whatever, you'll say, okay, he's using a Rain team. When you see Ninetales, you don't typically call it a Hail team. You typically call it Aurora Veil. Why? Because you'll see Ninetales paired with mons like Halucha, which can set up Swords Dances under terrain, right? Bulk up Zeraora. Maybe Gyarados. I'm just making the team that I use to ladder with for Rex. But Gyarados or any other abusers, right? Shell Smash Cloyster, which is an Ice type, but it doesn't get any buff from Hail besides Aurora Veil being up, right? Como that can Dragon Dance. So like you'll just see a bunch of setup Pokemon with it. Why? Because setup Pokemon appreciate being able to take an extra hit due to Veil being up. But it's not Hail itself. You don't call it a Hail team. You call it a Veil team because it's a team that functions based on Veil, not that it functions under Hail. Though Hail needs to be up for you to get Aurora Veil. That was maybe a little bit confusing, but I hope that made sense in what I'm saying. So, like, Hail really does need buffs in that sense, which is why I think it's the worst overall as a weather. But as a playstyle, I think that Aurora Veil is great. I think I recently got to number 30 on the ladder, just spamming Aurora Veil. I kind of feel like I could have easily gone more as well because it was just winning games left and right? But it just sets it up. But it's not a Hail thing. So I think Hail needs that buff. It needs better Slush Rush users because Alolan Sandslash doesn't exist and Beartick ain't that good. Archozolt is definitely going to be something cool because Archozolt can Bolt Beak, which is doubled in power. So that'd be really nice for Archozolt. Archozolt is also slow, but it has strong move in Bolt Beak, which is very big. It also has Freeze Dry, so it's an electric type that can deal with the ground types. Like Seismitoad, rather. I'm thinking about Seismitoad. It also has, obviously, Ice Crash, too. So, like, it has Bolt Beam, right, in its thing. It has Ice and Electric, which is fantastic. But I think Hail does need a buff in general, though. Similar to how Sun and Rain have. But I think that might be a little bit too broken if you give it the offensive buff. Like, if you give it a 1.5 move to a 1.5 times boost to moves like Blizzard, which are already 100% accurate. That's crazy, right? At least in the Rain, your hydro pumps are not 100% accurate. Only Hurricane and Thunder, which, I mean, sure, Zapdos is going to appreciate the hell out of that when it comes out, but because I believe it got Hurricane. If you guys didn't know, I believe it got Hurricane and also Weather Ball this gen. So that was shown at some point. But yeah, Hail definitely needs that. I feel like the maybe a defense boost for ice types kind of makes sense, right? Just naturally, right? Obviously, you have Slush Rush and you have Sand Rush, right? But if rock types get a special defense boost, maybe give ice types a defense boost. That way they can actually be better. Ice type is one of the worst, if not the worst, defensive typing, just because its lack of resistances. What does ice resist? Ice. Does it resist anything else? No. Should it resist water? Or at least be... maybe. I mean, you could freeze water. Shoot, even fire I don't think should be super effective on ice. You just melt me and I become water and I splash on you. Like, what's that? Maybe make fire neutral on ice. Shoot, give ice some resistances, man. Give it some buffs. Maybe that's a little bit, far-fetched, but that word always makes me laugh because it's a Pokemon. But yeah. So overall, I would say as an actual thing, I think that Rain. So overall, like not looking at the metagame, not anything. I think that Rain has the most pros. So I think Rain is number one. Sand and Sun are very close to each other, and then Hail would be way far. Like Hail wouldn't even be number 4. Like I put the terrains before I put Hail, and terrains aren't even weather conditions, right? Like, I mean, I was just trying to say that Hail is not as good. But in terms of the current metagame, I definitely put Sand and Sun. I put Sand as number 1 because I think Hippowdon is phenomenal, and so is Tyranitar. I put Sun probably behind it, and then it'd be like either Rain plus Aurora Veil, not even Hail, or Aurora Veil will go before Rain because current right now, just not that good. I mean, there's too many abusers, too many Seismitoad is basically mandatory in every team because of Dracovish, right? So I don't think Rain is as good as it could be. But yeah, guys, let me know your thoughts on this. How do you rank the weathers? Did what I say made sense at all in the slightest? I tried to take examples from both like singles and Smogon and also Battle Spot Stadium, which I play as well. But yeah, so Hail, not the best, but Aurora Veil, solid. I'll see you guys next time. Leave a like if you did enjoy. Catch you at BL Nights later today. And if y'all want to pick up my Puma merch, the link is down below. It's the first link in the description. Check it out. I'll see ya.